Falsely thoughts, race, life's a twisted place. No time to erase.
All right, Catholic. I think yours was either why should I believe in God and faith is unreliable for truth, right?
Yes, yeah, I'd like to concentrate on specifically on why you should believe in a God.
Sure.
And that's because everything that you perceive to exist is evidence for God, because it has the ontology of being understandable. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perceive it. I'm not saying perceive it, uh, in such a way where you're omniscient as to every single thing about the thing that you're perceiving. I'm just talking about like on a basic level, because obviously we can't know everything, right? But you can know, like for example, you can perceive there's a kitchen table in your kitchen. So just basic stuff. Individuals long before they knew of atoms didn't know that the kitchen table was composed of atoms, but they knew there was a kitchen table there. So since things outside of yourself have the ontological nature and being of understandability, that invokes the metaphysic of intelligibility. And intelligibility is not a concrete thing. In other words, you can't wrap up intelligibility and give it to someone as a Christmas gift. It exists as an abstract concept. But abstracts are of the mind. So since things exist in that state ontologically, with regards to intelligibility, irregardless of whether you exist, I exist, or any life in the universe exists, there would still need to be a mind necessary for those things to have that uh, ontological intelligibility about themselves. And so, since it's not your mind, my mind, or any mind in the universe, there's only one mind left, and that would be the mind of God that's instantiating and posing the very abstract concept of the metaphysics of intelligibility with regards to the ontological nature of all things.
Okay. So your argument is that things exist, therefore God. That's kind of nonsense,
Correct.
bro.
Well, could you go ahead and respond to the argument that I just made?
Yeah, sure. Things exist. That doesn't mean that God exists too.
Well, I went into detail why it does. Could you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean the only thing that you did was say in a very long way, things exist and we understand they exist, and because we understand they exist, they had to come from somewhere, which no one like disagrees with. Yeah, things had to form out of something and somewhere, but all you did was say that therefore God, but that's a non sequitur.
Well, you're still not uh, responding to the argument that I made with regards to the abstract concept of intelligibility.
Right, intelligibility exists because we exist, but without us, that doesn't mean that they'll have some that these things will have some sort of intelligibility onto themselves without someone already perceiving it.
Oh, okay. So then if there wasn't any human beings in the universe, you're telling me that a cube would no longer have the characteristics of a cube and a sphere would no longer have the characteristics of a sphere, ontologically speaking?
What do you mean? What do you even mean by that?
Well, let's say you saw a sphere and a cube. You can make a distinction between the two, correct?
Right.
So let's say you popped out of existence. Now, for 1,000 years, the sphere and the cube, you would believe that they still continue to exist, right?
Well, cubes and spheres are shapes. Are you talking about like with the form of a cube or the form of a sphere?
Yes,
Like,
the characteristics of a sphere and those characteristics of a cube. You wouldn't believe that somehow once you cease to exist, the cube would take on the characteristics of the sphere and the sphere would take on the characteristics of the cube, right? Simply because you cease to exist, right?
I'm not even sure what that means, because like cubes and spheres, they have characteristics that we gave them. They don't have characteristics that came out of nowhere.
You instantiate and impose the very characteristics of things outside of yourself.
What?
Are you telling me that you are responsible for the characteristics of all things in the universe?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that cubes and spheres and shapes and things like that, we just made those up. You know what I mean? They don't have forms outside the universe. Like that's
Right. So once again, you're saying we made them up. So you're saying,
yeah,
so you're
cubes and
saying,
spheres don't actually exist. We made them up.
oh, okay. So then, you're not actually talking to me right now. We're just making it up.
No, I'm talking to you because you're a physical thing. Like if I knew where you were, I can go over and touch you. You can't hand me a sphere.
Oh, I can't hand you a sphere, so I
No,
can't go ahead.
you can hand me an object that's shaped like a sphere, but the actual sphere, you can't hand that to me.
Okay, the object, does it have the uh, properties of a sphere?
Yeah, it has the properties of what we call a sphere, sure.
Okay. And the cube, does it have the properties of a cube?
What we call a cube, yeah.
Okay.
Without us
Well,
existing, those properties are not there.
oh, really? So let's say all mankind ceased to exist. You're saying that
The idea
let's
of
say
a
the
cube and a
sphere,
sphere no longer exist.
okay, so the idea of a sphere, let's say the sphere is on the left, the cube is on the right. You're telling me that that sphere and that cube no longer hold those characteristics, ontologically speaking. And so if, let's say, some other beings came along, popped into the universe, you're telling me that when they look at that sphere and that cube, they would not recognize it as being a sphere and a cube because it ceased to exist when mankind ceased to exist, right?
They would recognize it as whatever they will call it because they will have their own idea about it. They may not be cubes and spheres. They can be flirtle gerbil and nerdle furble
Well,
or
I'm
whatever
not
they would
talking
say.
about linguistics. I'm not talking about what it's called. I'm not talking about because there's different languages, so we're not talking about language. Just talking about recognizing the characteristics of what they are and make a distinction between the two. Are you
Yeah, they can
telling
make
me
a
that?
distinction between the two, and they can make the characteristics. They can impose characteristics on them, and they would understand it, right? And they will and even and we can be generous and give you that they'll like those creatures will understand it the same way that we would understand what a
Why?
cube and a sphere should be because like
Why is
they
that?
both understand the same. We both understand shapes. So
Okay, so those shapes exist ontologically?
no, shapes don't
Then
exist
how is it? Then why would they understand it the same way we do if and seeing what we're seeing if those things don't exist ontologically?
because we have vision. I'm not even sure what you're asking.
We have vision. So we have vision, and somehow our vision instantiates and imposes things outside of ourselves.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure
All right, can
exactly
I?
what you're missing.
No,
You
I'm
mind if I
listening.
come up with?
Because
Are you a
if I wasn't
solipsist?
listening, yeah, hold
Are
on,
you
hold
a
on.
solipsist?
Everybody pause. If I wasn't listening, I wouldn't ask you what that means.
Are you a solipsist?
What's a solipsist? Like a person that like external world skepticism? Like is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Or do you believe that there is an external world outside of yourself?
Yeah, I have no choice but to believe that.
Okay. Do you believe that that external world outside of yourself, irregardless of yourself, has ontological properties?
When you say ontological properties, what do you mean?
Yeah, the information that you're not instantiating and imposing, but instead that information exists outside of yourself. You're simply receiving it and making sense of it.
Oh, okay. So basically, like I perceive the world around me. Is that what you're asking?
Well, you're perceiving the information around you. Do you agree that that information exists irregardless of whether you exist?
Yeah, yeah. If I didn't exist, computers and cell phones will still exist. Yeah.
Okay, so then those things, that information exists ontologically irregardless of yourself, right?
Yeah, if I was never born, cell phones would still be around because someone invented cell phones.
Great. So that's invoking the metaphysic of intelligibility. So you've just admitted, irregardless of
What does that
yourself
mean? What does
or
that mean?
myself,
What does that
well,
mean?
I'm going to explain it to you. So, irregardless of yourself or myself or any human's existence,
Yeah, this was about to become a waste of time because none of this gets us to God in the first place. Big Carl, are you there?